Okay, in this video, I wanted to go over explanations of a couple of the problems from the binary ionic bonds and names worksheet, which is lesson 5.2. So the two that I chose were question number 5C, where you are given the formula CRO, and you are asked to name the compound. So I'm going to start with that one, and then after that we're going to look at number 6B, which is where you're given the name tin 4 oxide and you need to write the formula. So for the first one, for 5C, the first thing that you would want to start with is writing out the names of each of the elements that make up the compound. So looking at the periodic table, we see Cr is for chromium, and then O is for oxygen, but with all nonmetals, we change the ending of the second one to IDE, so this is oxide. Now, looking at the location of chromium, it's in the transition metals, which means I am going to have to put Roman numerals to indicate what the charge of chromium is. So in order to figure out what the Roman numerals are and what the charge of chromium is, I need to use what I know from the formula, which is the CRO. Well, oxygen is an element that always has the same charge, and so I'm going to use that to figure out what the charge of chromium is. So looking at the location of oxygen on the periodic table, its charge is a -2. I know that the charge of the entire molecule, or the entire compound, I should say, has to add up to 0, and I also need to look at how many of each subscript I have. Well, in CRO, I have just one of each, which is nice. It makes it nice and helpful for us. So if I have one oxygen and its charge is -2, and I have one chromium, what's the charge here that would make this charge plus -2 equals 0? So in that, using that information, I know that +2 plus -2 gives me 0, which means that this is chromium 2 oxide. So I'll put Roman numerals 2 in the middle there. Then, looking at 6B, we have tin 4 oxide. So in this case, we're going to do the reverse. We need to write the formula. So I'm going to start by writing the symbol and charge of each element that makes up this compound. So tin, I find on the periodic table, is Sn. And the location of tin is in one of those columns that doesn't have a fixed charge. And that's okay, because right here in the compound name, they give us the charge. So this is Roman numeral 4. Metals are always a positive charge, so I know that tin has a +4 oxidation number or charge. And then my other part of this is oxide, which I know is O for oxide, and the charge is a -2. And what I can do is I can take, ignoring the signs of each, the positive and negative part, those don't really matter. I'm just going to take the numbers 4 and 2 and cross them, called the crisscross method, to become the subscripts, which means I'm going to end up with Sn, and the 2 crosses down to be the subscript on tin, and then O, and the 4 crosses down to be the subscript on O. So I have Sn2O4. However, there's one more rule that you have to make sure you follow, which is if the subscripts can be reduced, you have to reduce them. And I see that there's a common multiple between 2 and 4. Both of these can be divided by 2. So I need to do that. I'm going to divide everything by 2, which means I'm going to end up with 1 Sn and then O2 with my final answer there. So these are the two explanation problems for worksheet 5.2.